shouldn't have come down here.
Samuel Ortiz, 42, had worked security for nearly a decade. He'd seen it all: break-ins, power failures, false alarms. But when he transferred to the Crescent Mall, things felt off. The mall had been half abandoned for years, only a handful of stores still open. At night, the escalators stood motionless and the soft hum of the ventilation echoed like a whisper. On his second week, his shift supervisor said, "Don't worry if the basement motion alarm goes off. The sensors down there are just buggy. There's no access anymore." But that night, it did go off. At exactly 3:17 a.m., the alarm wasn't T-loud, just a small red light blinking on the main monitor labeled B-level service hallway. Samuel stared at it. That area hadn't been opened since a flooding incident 6 years earlier. He radioed, "Control, I'm getting movement in the basement zone. You seeing that?" Static. Then a faint, broken voice. "Ignore it. Basement's sealed." Except he could swear the voice wasn't from his supervisor. It sounded like someone whispering directly into the radio. He checked the door logs. No entries, but the motion light blinked again. He brought up the old basement camera feed. It took a few seconds to load. Then the image appeared. Grainy, black and white. A hallway lined with pipes, dripping water. And halfway down the corridor, a figure moved, slowly walking toward the camera, head lowered, arms limp at the sides. The feed cut to static. Then the screen flashed a timestamp. 2018. An hour later, the elevator to the basement dinged. It shouldn't have. The floor was locked out of access. Samuel stood frozen as the doors opened halfway before jamming. A faint draft drifted up. The air smelled of mildew and something metallic, like old blood. He shined his flashlight down the dark elevator shaft and heard the faint thud of footsteps from below. He should have called it in. He knew that. But curiosity and fear made him swipe his master keycard and override the lock. The elevator groaned as it descended into darkness. The air grew colder. Each floor he passed flickered past. 1, G, then B. The doors opened to a narrow hallway, concrete walls wet with condensation. His flashlight beam caught something on the floor. Bare footprints, leading away from the elevator. At the far end, an old metal door stood half open. The sign above it read, "Basement Generator. Authorized staff only." He stepped inside. The room was filled with humming old machines, shadows moving across the walls from the flickering light. Then, a sound. Something scraping behind the generators. He moved closer. A torn security jacket lay draped over a pipe. The patch still visible. Crescent Mall Security. The name tag said P. Harlan. Harlan was the guard who'd gone missing in 2019. Samuel raised his radio. "Control, I think I found something down here." Before he could finish, the generator shut off. The entire basement plunged into darkness. He could hear it now. Slow, heavy breathing from the far corner. His flashlight flickered, catching glimpses of movement. A pale face peeking from behind the pipes. Eyes clouded and wet. A mouth opening, whispering through the darkness. "You shouldn't have come down." The flashlight died, and something cold brushed past his arm. Upstairs at 3:46 a.m., every alarm in the control room went off at once. Motion sensors across the mall lit up red. Storage rooms, loading bays, hallways. But when the morning crew arrived, the alarms were silent again. They found Samuel's radio near the basement elevator. The master keycard was missing. And on the security feed at 3:17 a.m., the basement camera flickered back to life, showing the corridor empty. Then a faint silhouette stepped into view, wearing Samuel's uniform, and looked directly at the camera. A week later, a new guard started. On his first night, the same basement alarm blinked red. When he looked at the camera feed, a man stood by the elevator doors below, head tilted upward, staring at the lens. And the timestamp at the bottom of the screen read, 3:17 a.m. Sometimes the alarms don't warn you about something. Sometimes they're trying to contain it. This was the basement alarm, part of the first shift series. You're listening to dreadful screams. Turn off your lights. And pray the alarm never goes off again.
It's already inside.
The Vander and Kermer research facility wasn't much to look at from the outside. A glass and metal fortress surrounded by an empty parking lot. David Renshaw, 49, was its only night security guard. He liked the solitude, the quiet hum of monitors, the rhythmic clicking of the cameras as they switched views. His shift began every evening at 10 p.m. and ended at 6 a.m. He had the building memorized. The lobby, the labs, the storage rooms, the hallways that stretched like veins through the steel heart of the place. It was peaceful. Until camera 9. It started as a flicker, a simple static glitch on the feed covering corridor B7, the one leading to the old research wing. He tapped the monitor. The image cleared. For a second he thought he saw movement, a dark shape sliding across the wall. But when he rewound the footage, nothing was there. No shape. No light source to cast a shadow. Just the empty hallway. He shrugged it off as electrical interference. But at 2:59 a.m., the same flicker happened again. Only this time, the shadow lingered. Over the next week, it became a pattern. Every night at exactly 2:59 a.m., camera 9 would glitch. The lights in corridor B7 would dim slightly, and a silhouette, tall, almost human, would appear at the far end. It never walked. It drifted, like a smear of darkness sliding toward the lens. David tried to fix it. He replaced the camera. He checked the wiring. He even had maintenance inspect the area during the day. They found nothing. But every night the shadow returned, and every night it got closer. The hallway was sealed off years ago after a lab fire. No one was allowed inside. But when David pulled up the access logs, he found something disturbing. A door swipe entry had been recorded, from a keycard no longer in the system. The name on the log was Dr. M. Havers, the head researcher who died in the same fire. At 2:45 a.m. the next night, David decided to check corridor B7 himself. He carried a flashlight, a radio, and his keycard. The hallway lights were dim, the air colder than anywhere else in the building. As he walked, his radio crackled softly, a faint voice whispering his name. David. You shouldn't be here. He froze. No one was on the line. Ahead, the sealed door stood slightly ajar. Someone had broken the security tape. Beyond the door was a large room lined with shattered glass panels and broken monitors. Dust coated everything. But what drew his attention was the mirror mounted on the far wall. Tall, cracked down the middle, covered in strange markings. And directly in front of it, footprints, fresh. He lifted his flashlight, and the mirror's reflection wasn't matching his movement. When he raised the light, the reflection lagged behind. When he took a step closer, the version of him inside the glass didn't move at all. Instead, it slowly raised its hand and pointed behind him. He turned, and the shadow from camera 9 was there. Tall, distorted, featureless. It moved without sound, gliding closer until it stood only feet away. David stumbled backward, dropping the flashlight. For a second, the beam landed on its form, and the surface of the shadow rippled as if it were made of liquid darkness. Then the mirror began to hum. A low, vibrating sound that seemed to come from inside his skull. The shadow turned toward the glass and vanished. He ran back to the control room, slamming the door shut behind him, breathing hard, hands shaking. The monitors flickered. All feeds turned to static except one, camera 9. On the screen, the shadow stood inside the lab, motionless. But now there was another shape beside it, his own reflection, perfectly still. The timestamp read 2:59, 2:59:01, 2:59:02, until it reached 3 a.m., and the feed went black. Days passed. David stopped showing up for work. The company hired a replacement, Alex, a younger guard who didn't believe in ghost stories. On his first night, as he sat watching the monitors, camera 9 flickered to life. The timestamp read 2:59 a.m. He leaned closer and saw a man standing at the end of the hall wearing a security uniform, eyes wide, hand pressed against the inside of the glass. The name tag on his chest read, D. Renshaw. Some places don't record time, they trap it. Every frame, every flicker of light, a loop waiting to play again. If you ever see something moving on your security camera, and it looks like a shadow with your shape, don't look away. This was the shadow beyond camera 9. You're listening to dreadful screams. Turn off your lights and watch your monitors closely, because sometimes the shadows are watching back. He turned, and the shadow from camera 9 was there. Tall, distorted, featureless. It moved without sound, gliding closer until it stood only feet away. David stumbled backward, dropping the flashlight. For a second, the beam landed on its form, and the surface of the shadow rippled as if it were made of liquid darkness. Then the mirror began to hum. A low, vibrating sound that seemed to come from inside his skull. The shadow turned toward the glass and vanished. He ran back to the control room, slamming the door shut behind him, breathing hard, hands shaking. The monitors flickered. All feeds turned to static except one, camera 9. On the screen, the shadow stood inside the lab, motionless. But now there was another shape beside it, his own reflection, perfectly still. The timestamp read 2:59, 2:59:01, 2:59:02, until it reached 3x a.m., and the feed went black. Days passed. David stopped showing up for work. The company hired a replacement, Alex, a younger guard who didn't believe in ghost stories. On his first night, as he sat watching the monitors, camera 9 flickered to life. The timestamp read 2:59 a.m. He leaned closer and saw a man standing at the end of the hall wearing a security uniform, eyes wide, hand pressed against the inside of the glass. The name tag on his chest read, D. Renshaw. Some places don't record time, they trap it. Every frame, every flicker of light, a loop waiting to play again. If you ever see something moving on your security camera, and it looks like a shadow with your shape, don't look away. This was the shadow beyond camera 9. You're listening to dreadful screams. Turn off your lights and watch your monitors closely, because sometimes the shadows are watching back.
It's still watching.
Ethan Cole never believed in ghosts. He believed in fatigue, fluorescent light headaches, and coffee that never stayed hot long enough. He'd worked security for 3 years, private contracts mostly. The kind of jobs where nothing ever happened until it did. When he got transferred to Ravel Biotech, he thought it'd be an easy gig. Air-conditioned, clean, quiet. A research facility outside town that shut down after 9 p.m. His shift ran from 10 to 6. 8 hours of camera feeds and keycard patrols. 8 hours of silence. On his first night, his supervisor, a man named Lowe, gave him the usual rundown. Stay on your route, log motion alerts, and if you see lights flicker on level B4, ignore it. That's the mirror calibration lab. They run automated tests at night. Ethan nodded. Sounded routine. Except, when he opened his building map later that night, there was no level B4. The first time it happened was a Thursday, close to 3 a.m. Ethan was half asleep in the monitoring room, screens glowing in a wall of static blue. Then one of them flickered. Cam B407. He frowned. He'd never seen that camera label before. The feed resolved into a bright, sterile lab. Metal counters, mirrors mounted on the walls, and a single tall mirror bolted upright in the center. He leaned closer. Something about the reflection caught his eye. The door behind him in the feed was slightly open. But in reality, the control room door behind him was closed. He turned around. Nothing. Turned back. The reflection blinked, and he hadn't. He laughed it off. Glitch, he told himself. Old feed. Latency. Still, he wrote a note in his log. Cam B407 active. Unknown feed. Possibly test channel. 2 nights later, curiosity took hold. He called up the elevator system. Buttons for B1, B2, and B3 lit up. But the next space, where B4 should have been, was just a faint, unmarked rectangle. Out of boredom, he pressed it. The elevator shuddered, groaned, then descended deeper than he thought the building went. No floor chime, no lights. When the doors finally slid open, a cold draft hit his face. A concrete hallway stretched ahead, fluorescent lights flickering in slow rhythm. Each door had the same printed warning: do not observe reflection for more than 10 seconds. He hesitated. Every instinct told him to go back. But at the end of the corridor, one door stood slightly ajar. Lab 47M, the mirror room. Inside, everything was coated in dust. Monitors off, tables empty. And there, in the center, the mirror from the feed, 8 feet tall, seamless glass, framed in dull steel. He stepped closer, flashlight trembling in his grip. At first, his reflection appeared normal. Then, a second version of him blinked half a second late. It tilted its head when he didn't, and behind that reflection, a shadow moved. He spun around, nothing there, turned back. The shadow was closer, standing just behind his mirrored self. The glass fogged like breath from the other side, and from deep within, a whisper bled through the air vents. "Let me out." Ethan stumbled back, nearly dropping his light. The mirror surface rippled, fluid, alive, then stilled. The next morning, he told Lowe. The supervisor didn't even look surprised. "That room's sealed, Cole. Has been for years. Whatever you saw, it's old footage." Ethan pushed the subject. "Then why is the elevator working?" Lowe's jaw tightened. "Don't go down there again." That night at 2:59, cam B407 lit up again. The feed showed the same mirror, but he was standing in the reflection, even though he was still upstairs watching. His mirrored self smiled, a slow, unnatural grin. The screen cut to black. He needed proof. At 2:45 a.m., he grabbed his body cam and returned to the elevator. This time, the B4 button glowed red, already waiting. The elevator doors opened before he touched them. Air colder than ice rushed out. The hallway lights flickered faster now, almost pulsing. The warnings on the doors were scratched out. From the mirror room, he heard tapping, faint, rhythmic, like nails on glass. He stepped inside. His flashlight cut through the dark, revealing himself in the mirror again. But the reflection wasn't copying his movement anymore. It turned its head slowly and whispered with his own voice, "You shouldn't have come back." Then the lights went out. The footage recovered from his body cam later was short. 35 seconds of static, then a scream. The last frame showed the mirror rippling, swallowing light like water. At 3 a.m., every camera in the building glitched simultaneously. Power surged, systems reset. And then, silence. When morning staff arrived, Ethan's post was empty. His flashlight lay by the elevator, lens cracked. The body cam sat on the console, still recording, though no one had touched it. A week later, a new guard named Riley took over. First night, calm, quiet. Then, at exactly 2:59 a.m., a new feed appeared on the monitors, cam B407. He leaned closer. Inside the mirror room, a man stood motionless in the reflection, wearing a security uniform, face pale, eyes open, unblinking. The name tag on his chest read, E. Cole. As the clock struck 3 QQ, the figure turned toward the camera and smiled. Some mirrors don't show the present. They show the waiting. And sometimes, when the reflection moves first, it isn't you looking in. It's something looking out. This was The Mirror Room. You've been listening to Dreadful Screams. Turn off your lights, and whatever you do, don't stare too long.